Welcome to the Tackling College Sports Podcast, the definitive resource to help you navigate your way to play college-level sports. Here are your hosts, Chris Legates and Mark Franco, where they want you, the TCS Nation, to be your best.
Welcome, TCS Nation, and thanks for tuning into the Tackling College Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Franco, and sitting right next to me is my co-host. Don't you dare tell him you're out of NZ King Salmon Sashimi, Chris Legates.
Good morning, Mark.
Chris, how's everything?
It's great. A lot of snow up to my kneecaps.
Yeah,
here.
dusting of 14 inches of snow, and right now we're both sitting here in our snorkel jackets, the old school style, the hood zipped up with the fur at the end of the collar.
And I can just see Mark's eyes right
Exactly. Hey, so Chris, today we have someone from your past, associate head coach of men's soccer at Santa Rosa Junior College, Dave Latourette. Welcome, and please don't tell us you're in shorts and a t-shirt.
Absolutely not. I'm actually in jeans and a jacket, and I actually have my black lab that's crawling on my lap right now. He's very, very needy, but it's funny you guys talk about being up to your waist in snow, but we're up to our waist in water right now. If anyone's probably seen weather or news, it's getting crazy out here in Northern California.
You're not in the sunny southern part of the state.
Not even close. That's everyone always thinks that everyone thinks they're like, oh, it's all sunshine and rainbows in California. I go come spend a winter with me.
Yeah, come up north.
Yeah.
Well, again, Dave, thanks for joining us. Let's start right away here. Can you take our listeners back to your playing days at Eastern Connecticut State College and work your way up to what you are doing currently?
Yeah, sure. Man, I hope we have enough recording data that we can go through it, but
take your time.
It's been a while, but actually I started my collegiate days at Springfield College and had made a decision and probably end up talking about this later, but for me, it was ended up being a financial thing and an educational thing and a value thing that I ended up transferring to Eastern Connecticut after 3 semesters and spent the rest of my college time there and my degree work there. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being back in state for some reason. Eastern was something it was always on the radar for me when I was in high school. That good program. We ended up playing some state tournament matches on their facility. And so something was attracted to it, so I went back that route. So finished my playing at Eastern, reasonably successful career there, which I always felt like until my career, I had never caught up to the level that I was at. I felt like I was always chasing the game a little bit. I came from a small community in Connecticut, Old Lyme, and no club programs and really no exposure to very much exposure to high level soccer. So I felt like I was always playing catch up. And then from there, and I ended up had to stay an extra semester at Eastern to finish up a teaching certificate there that I wanted to do. And really, really fortunate. It was sort of pushed into coaching. My degree was exercise science range, physical education. And Beth Regan, who was there at the time, sort of just out of the blue asked me if I wanted to be her assistant coach, and not really thinking about it at the time, but it was obviously she saw something in me that I didn't. And that really just started my coaching escalation. And, in the a couple summers before that, I'd spent some time with Tony DeCicco at his goalkeeper camps. And those two sort of, springboarded me, into, full on collegiate coaching, where my thought process was I'm going to teach at elementary school, maybe middle school, coach some high school soccer. And that was just the career track that I sort of had in my head. And one thing led to another. And at that time, I think the biggest kind of the catapult was Beth, but also Tony DeCicco at the time. And I went and done a camp, and he asked me if I could do more. And then all of a sudden he sort of pushed me into the fire pit a little bit, just like Beth did, saw something in me that I don't think that I necessarily saw in myself as a teacher, as a coach at the time. So from there I spent a year at Eastern, and also in that same time frame, working with Tony. Tony offered me a position within his camps as a national director, and he just started sending me to do stuff. And then it quickly went from there. And then he recommended me to Sasha Sarovsky at the University of Hartford. And that's where Chris and I have our history too. So I was really fortunate to be brought in by, and Chris probably feels the same way, if not one of the best collegiate coaches, if not soccer minds that we know, brought me in, and I learned so much in that 2-year window with Sasha that, it's hard to ever pay that back. So University of Hartford for 2 years with them, some great opportunities in, NCAA runs there. And then I stayed on for an extra year when they hired and brought in a new coach at the time. And I actually had interviewed for the head position at the time and was disappointed that I didn't get the head position. And then from there, from University of Hartford, I felt like I was sort of toasted a bit on coaching soccer at the time. And my background was fitness and exercise science. And I decided to make a move, and I went up north to New Hampshire and took a job as a fitness director at a club. And what was interesting is the job didn't last super long, because next thing you know it, I had met up with Steve Swanson at Dartmouth College at the time with the women's side, and who he's now at Virginia. And all of a sudden I was working with his goalkeepers, and they offered me a position as director of coaching there. So that it was a quick break from coaching soccer. And then from there I went on to the University of Arkansas, and that was an interesting a move, because people are like Connecticut, Vermont, and New Hampshire, and why Arkansas? Why would you go to Arkansas? And I sort of,
it sounds natural to me.
Yeah, natural progression. Yeah,
it was bizarre. They offered to bring me in and fly me in and show me. I'm like, sure, I'll go down. And to be honest, in the back of my head, I was probably, I'm really interested, but I'm just not sure that's where I want to move to. And I still remember the day flying in. It was either St. Louis or Kansas City. Kind of falling asleep on the plane. From St. Louis to Fayetteville, and this little small turboprop, and I wake up and I look down and I see mountains and I see this beautiful terrain. I'm thinking, where the heck are we? And we land in Fayetteville, and I'm like, all right, this is not really what I completely expected. And that sort of just started to change my mind about that. And spent 3 years coaching there with Janet Rayfield, who has, moved on to, she's at the University of Illinois now, and we had some success at Arkansas, but she had a lot of success at Illinois as well. And at the time, so she decided to leave, and it was similar to Sasha leaving. Then I'm in that same situation where, gosh, I like the program. I like where I'm at. They decided to hire a different head coach in the process. And initially he was bringing me on, and then on short notice, he decided that one of his other assistants from where he was coming was going to come. And all of a sudden I was in this immediate position the timing year wasn't good to go find another college coaching job. It was spring, nothing really available. So I decided to stick it out in Arkansas because I really liked it, and I had a good pool of friends, and I liked the people at the university, although I wasn't at the university any longer. And I decided to try and start my own business, which was coaching endurance athletes. And that's where the transformation started to happen for me as a coach in terms of the disciplines that I was coaching. I mean, I'd always coached some people a little bit because I was always active in that sport as my hobby at the time, and did that and built it up a little bit, but wasn't able to really make it a go there. And then from there, I spent an extra 3 years after the University of Arkansas and decided to move out here to Northern California in Santa Rosa, which where my sister is. And I'd always used to come and visit, and I would always come and do some triathlon races. And I loved the area, and I loved the people that I got to meet. And so an opportunity came up to move out here thinking that, hey, I can do this and try and start my coaching business at the time. And next thing you know, I was able to move away from some of the working in the triathlon industry a little bit to doing my coaching business full time. And I sort of still sit there now, but of course I've migrated back into coaching soccer a bit more, which has been really, really good for me. It's been a wild sort of circular type of thing where I always come back to it. And I think I realize now that when I tried to take a respite from the coaching, even full on coaching, teaching type of stuff, I realized that I'm always going to end up coaching and teaching at some level. I think it's just part of my nature. It's part of my DNA. It's part of the things that people saw in me when I was young that I didn't see in myself, and sometimes I still don't see in myself because I think it's just a product of nature. And Santa Rosa Junior College has been an interesting thing because I came here and I was working on my business and coaching endurance athletes and mainly triathletes. And the gentleman's there, the head coach, is Marty Kinahan. Marty's been there for 18 years. And his wife was swimming in my swim squad, and somehow she found out that I had coached some soccer, and all of a sudden the power of Google comes into play, and she comes to me, she goes, "Why are you not coaching soccer anymore?" And one thing led to another. She goes, my husband's the coach at the JC. He wants to have lunch with you. He'd like to talk. And then it's just grown from there to just helping out a little bit and being a consultant for him, to finding a way to bring me on more there now. And not only, my coaching with him now, but I'm also teaching as adjunct faculty at the college as well. And I love it. I mean, it's been great, but it's allowing me to sort of appease both sides of my love for coaching and different types of coaching, coaching soccer, coaching endurance sports, teaching. So really, when I sit and look at it, I'm like, this is a pretty good mix now. And I feel strongly and I feel confidently about, where I'm at. So that's sort of that's the short version. I mean, I got longer versions if you want to. So, because Marty,
that was great. I'm sorry. It seems like every stop there was that one person, right, that sort of got you into that position.
Absolutely, and
it's kind of neat.
And it's funny because these are all the people, when I go back in time, have been my influential people in my life, as far as coaching, as far as supporting me and believing in me, giving me opportunity. That you don't necessarily expect or that you ask for. And you look at these people now that, my track record with, Tony and Sasha and Steve Swanson and Janet, and now, with Marty, those people in my professional, those people all have achieved and are still achieving at a high level. And what's really nice is I know I can pick up the phone and I can call any one of them. And at least have a conversation, but they've also been supportive of me in some of my new ventures, trying to look at different jobs and, even reconnect. I connected with Janet a bit at the convention this January. So it's been great, and the funny story about Marty, I'll tell you real quick, and I think I have to tell this, is that, so I actually applied for this job, the Santa Rosa Junior College men's job, when I was in Arkansas at the time. I was only been there for 2 years, and I thought it was a great situation for me. Teaching, coaching, it's a different recruiting format. I love the area. And Marty and I were in that pool, that final pool of the pool of coaches applicants. So it's ironic that Marty's got the job. He's still there. And then I'm his assistant. So it's sort of it's been a funny process. I've enjoyed it.
And what year was that, Dave, when you were in Arkansas?
So I was there, the seasons I was there was 96, 97, and 98. Those were the three soccer seasons, the 3 falls that I was there.
Okay, got it. All right, Dave, one more question from me, and then we'll pass over to Chris. What have been the toughest challenges in your career so far?
It's Chris and I touched on it earlier before we came onto the recording. And, some of it is dealing with and adapting to the change in culture and athletes. But I think that keeps you honest. So I think it's a challenge, but I think it's a positive challenge as far as growing. But I think one of the biggest challenges, true challenges for me, emotionally in terms of career basis, dealing with setback. And I just say it's setback, and maybe some people look at it as, an opportunity for growth. But I probably had 3 or 4 job interviews or been finalists for candidates for what I think are jobs or programs, collegiate programs that I wouldn't be sitting where I am right now in my office in Santa Rosa, California, had these things happen. But then again, I wouldn't have met my wife. And so there's all different kinds of change. But that's been a big thing. There were a couple positions where you sort of take it personally and why you didn't get the job, and you have to get through that. And I'll be honest with you, one of them was Hartford. And I don't know, Chris knows that, Artie Hennig, who was one of our players at the time, was on the search committee. Sure. And I think initially they brought me into that interview process because I was the assistant and I was part of the success that was going on with Sasha. And for me to get in and have that interview, I think I surprised a lot of people to the point where we have to make a decision now. And, the decision was to go somewhere else. And I think they felt that I was too young, and I didn't like the side that they felt that I was too young. Too inexperienced is one thing, but to tell someone they're too young was that was one of them. But those are the kind of things that I feel have been challenges for me. But you turn around and you learn from them, and you kind of just keep plugging along. Yeah.
Chris.
First of all, it is special for me to be able to talk to Dave after a long time. Facebook and all those things, we've been able to connect and spend a lot of time chatting on there. But for me, the way he speaks of Tony or Steve Swanson, I speak of him that way. I mean, to me, I don't think I'd be where I am now without the help of Dave Latourette, period. When he came into the University of Hartford, the program was in shambles. I mean, there's no other way to put it, and as a goalkeeper, as I was telling Mark before we started recording, there wasn't, I had never had a everyday goalkeeping and / assistant coach. And Dave was brilliant. I mean, as a mentor, as a motivator, as a tactician, the way that the program elevated from the minute that not only Sasho, but Dave stepped on campus was, the success spoke for itself. But for what Dave did for me, even afterward, we spent a lot of time traveling together. He brought me into the Soccer Plus family, and we spent summers on little prop planes in, South Carolina and Kentucky and places like that. So, the connections that we've made through that, I mean, they're lifelong. You can see a Soccer Plus person at a convention, at a game, anywhere, and connect with them like it's a brotherhood or a sisterhood. It's amazing. And to me, Dave is somebody I always tap into when I train players, whether it's goalkeepers or coaches, because period, I wouldn't be where I am now. And the way he trained us and me personally, I felt like because of him, there was nothing that I couldn't accomplish. And I tap into that in my life every day. So it is a pleasure to reconnect with Dave again. So that's my part, Dave, right there.
No, Chris, I appreciate that. We had some fun too. And I think your listeners out there should know that if it wasn't for one young man named George Costellas, you would have probably played a lot more matches at the University of Hartford. Again, that's part of the brotherhood of it, right?
And
but you help, and I this, and I try to teach this to goalkeepers along the way. But what people don't realize what you did for George by bringing your A game to training every single day. So it was, and I think you guys realize that. You guys are friends, and you guys realize that as well.
Yeah, and as a coach later on, but now, I would be doing a disservice to him and the team if you weren't pushing. And of course, I wanted to play,
right.
So you're gonna do everything you can, and you trained us hard and you pushed us. And it was a great experience for me. And as we've talked about a little bit, in April we're gonna reunite that team for 25 years. Probably the first time that almost all the entire group has been together. So that'll be a special time for us as well.
Pretty special group for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Dave, now you're involved in the community college aspect of junior college environment. In what ways would you say that that's a better path for student athletes now? And what student athletes do you think should examine that path?
That's a really good question. And it's something that I think I've brought to Santa Rosa from my experiences at, the Division I, Division III level, and just my personal experiences as an athlete, a student athlete. But from the biggest thing is and I've had to learn this. This has taken me some time, and I still have to take a step back and say this to myself. And I said, everybody's at the junior college, or they're at the junior college for a reason, or the community college for a reason. Now, those reasons are different for everybody. For some, it's financial. It's like, it's financial. I find value here, et cetera. For some people, it's an academic thing. They spent way too long as an undergraduate in high school just skating by and realizing, holy Moses, I can't really go where I really want to go. And to play soccer, we get kids that aren't NCAA eligible, so they have to spend 2 years with us and take care of the academics to be able to move on. So there's that athlete. And then, there's athletes that have been out for a couple years and they're just not sure, and they're trying to find themselves. And one of our goals is to help these kids try to find themselves and move them on. A great story we have is a kid who's 22 years old this year, came to us and spent some time out working, had to work for his family. And then all of a sudden he realized, I'm 22 years old and I can't just keep working at the Boys and Girls Club as much as I like that. And super kid. We didn't even know him. He shows up to training camp on the first day, and he kind of showed up a little bit late, actually. I want to say first day, but it was probably the end of the first week. And we set him on. We were playing 8v8, small, semi-small sided, timed games. And he steps on, and lay some balls off. Oh, this guy's crafty. Oh, he's quick because he's slight. He doesn't always look the part. And then all of a sudden he knocks a couple on the back of the net, and we look at each other and we're like, all right, there's no issues there. I mean, it was so 2 years later, he's 23 goals, 14 assists. When we play teams, it's double team, it's kick him, everything you can to, from the start of the season, because he had a good season last year as well. So there's stories like that. And so we have all types of kids, kids that we need to help academically that have slight learning disabilities, and, run the gamut, and that's where it is. So it's not so much that who is it good for? I think it's good for everybody. And one of the pieces that we have with these kids is some of them, we don't want to be the last option. We just want to be a viable option. And I think a lot of people look at a JC as, oh, it's the last option. But the reality is we're a way better situation for kids to make them more marketable or valuable 2 years down the road than they are when they come out of high school, because they think they should have been recruited and they weren't recruited, and now they're disappointed. If it's March of your senior year and you haven't gotten a phone call or a letter, then you're not going to get recruited.
Yeah, no. Dave, do you find that the recruiting process at a community college is different? And do you find that you maybe are spending time trying to dispel some notions and stigmas that maybe are attached to the community college?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we are in a unique situation in California. So how would I explain it? If you look at the junior college, or we call it community college, some of the schools are just are referred to as community college or junior college here in California. So really we have, if you looked across the United States, there's Division I junior colleges, which are the Tylers, the San Jacinto, some of those names here, the Barton Community College. Some of these have had really pushing kids on football, and those Division I programs, they're scholarship programs. So these junior colleges are scholarship programs. So they're offering money, housing, all kinds of stuff to kids. And then there's Division III. There's no Division II. So it's just Division I, which is scholarship based, and then Division III, which is not. And then there is California Community College, which is Division III, but we operate as our own entity in California, and that's split into northern and southern California, so NorCal, SoCal. So we operate a little bit differently. So from our recruiting standpoint, and this is all, how would I explain it? Almost all the schools in California work under the same recruiting protocol. Essentially is that if a kid is from outside of California, whether it's an international or for me, if it's a kid from Connecticut, I can't reach out to that kid and actually physically recruit him. That student, if they're interested in Santa Rosa Junior College, needs to contact us, and then that sort of opens the door from their side for us to go out and be able to recruit them actively. So it's kind of an interesting process. So it actually limits the recruiting a little bit to some point. Coaches find ways around it, and however that works. But in some ways it's good, because you sort of have to deal with what you're given at certain levels. So the majority of our kids are local kids. They're kids from the county. We have kids from surrounding counties because of our success and Marty's success from the past. So that stretches out a little bit more. And so it's very different for us. So, we're working under our own auspices, and we compete only in California. And it's a different situation, and it's odd because there are 4 or 5 schools here in California, because of their remoteness, they're given open recruiting status, so they can recruit anywhere. So what ends up with these programs, they sort of look like international academies. There's a school called Feather River, Lake Tahoe Community College, a couple other schools. You play them and you look at their roster, it's 30 deep. There's 27 internationals, Sweden, Norway, Spain, Brazil, England, Ireland, Scotland, and they recruit via video and recruiting services, which are something we can't do. We just don't have that ability. So and we get the occasional international kid who is they're savvy. They get on social media, or they know a kid from the region. We have a kid we picked up 2 years ago. He was actually going to go to Lake Tahoe Community College. He started looking around, reached out to us. He ends up here. And then this past year, we had another kid from that general area because of Wilson, comes to us. So So the pipeline opens that way a little bit. So we end up with a couple international kids, and there's the international programs at the school. So sometimes we get our bait that way. But reality is, our bread and butter, 80% of our kids are in our backyard. And that's not even easy, because some of those kids are really good players, and they're trying to look at D1s, D2s, D3s and do their diligence. So the recruiting is definitely different from, for us as a junior college, but also we're very different than other junior colleges.
Dave, can you do an ID camp?
We can do, we do what we call our open house. So we do that in the spring. It's a day where anybody really, doesn't have to be the local kids, anybody that's interested in us or anyone that we've recruited, we come in and, we'll spend the day from doing campus tours to doing some technical work to small-sided to 11v11. So we'll spend the day playing and evaluating, and the majority of these kids are kids that are on our recruit list or that have sent us information. But they get to come and see campus, and there's kids that decide after they come to campus, they may be looking at from another county, looking at the community college in that county, and then they come here and they look at it and they're like, okay, I like that situation better. I like the coaching staff, the facilities, the history better. So we can do it, and we just refer to it as an open house, because we just want it to be that way. We want them to see everything and all the pieces of the puzzle that we have to offer. And actually, and I should go back and say, before the recruiting thing, when we say things we have to offer, we don't have any dorm facilities. So, the schools I was referring to in California that you almost feel like they're academies, those schools, because they're remote, they have dorms. So we don't have a housing opportunity. So for us, even if we wanted to bring in a bunch of internationals or kids from other parts of the state or the country, we just don't have the resources. We have resources and contacts for housing, but not in a mass level on campus.
That's interesting, Dave. It really is. I haven't heard of that, so it opens my eyes a little bit to how the process in California is.
Yeah, and it's just different. It's it's interesting that it's hey, here are the puzzles and the pieces that you have to play with, and we do the best with what we can in that situation, and we feel like we've done a pretty good job of having success with those limitations.
And in general, Dave, for the student athlete, regardless of the sport, in your opinion, what type of athlete should look at a junior college, a community college, however you want to? What do you think the benefits are, and who should look at them?
Chris, this is great. We just started to redo, and I did this when I came back from the convention. I said, we need to put the things that we believe as a staff, and I think this would probably reiterate across some of our other staffs on campus. But what do we believe as a staff that we can put on one piece of paper and attract kids and start to change our thought process a little bit, because kids are changing, culture is changing, et cetera. And I think that kids in the past have gone to junior college because it was either financial and they wanted to stay close to home, they weren't sure what they were going to do, or they just needed academically, they just couldn't move on. They weren't NCAA eligible academically, so they had to go to a junior college. And one thing we're trying to do now and is appease to every kid, even if they're NCAA eligible, they've got good academics, maybe their family's okay financially and they can go to school, but we want to invite kids to Santa Rosa Junior College, not as a backup, but as, hey, we're going to provide you an opportunity. We're going to provide you value, which is value in the school, one of the best junior colleges in the country. So at a value that's hard to compare, easy to move kids on if they take care of academics here. We want to help develop them as students. We want to help develop them as athletes. So in the end, what we think we want to do is by developing them as people, as students, as athletes, as we want to improve their value. So here's one thing that we try to, and I don't like the word sell, but we try to talk to kids, and if we can talk to parents about, is that we want to improve their value. We end up with players that buy in. Maybe they come to us and they were offered a couple $1,000s, small amount in scholarship money to go to a scholarship school, let's just say a Division II California school. And they may feel like, you know what, I'm worth more than that. A perfect example is we had a kid, we've had two kids of the last 3 years, have been in that situation. One of them was more financial, and then he needed to stay close to home. And the other one was actually had gone to a state school. They pulled some money from him, so he decided to come back. He said, I'm worth more than that. And, so one of them spent 2 years here with us, basically played every minute of every game for 2 years. In those 2 years, he played almost 50 games with postseason. And now he ends up at a Division I school on about 90% scholarship, because Chris, you and I both know when everyone says they're on a full scholarship, they're not.
They're not. They are not.
Just sounds
so good. He ends up, instead of being in a partial scholarship at a D2 school, which is nothing wrong with the D2 schools, don't take that wrong, but ends up improved his value massively. So now he's paid less money to be at Santa Rosa Junior College for 2 years than he would have if he would have paid more on a partial scholarship to go to the other school. So now he ends up at a D1 school and starts every game, captain for 2 years at a D1 school to finish his career. So basically he started every game of his college career for 4 years. So one of the big things we're trying to get to some of these kids is we understand the value of going to a 4-year school, but you can come to us, play 40 plus matches in 2 years, as opposed to maybe playing in sporadic matches for 2 years. And we feel confident in our staff and our ability and our background of understanding the quote next level, that we can take these kids, put them in a situation when they're a junior coming out of Santa Rosa Junior College, that they're ready to move on academically. They're better people. They're better students. They're better in the community. And we put them into these coaches' hands. And then the coaches look at them and they're ready to insert them into their system and they can play. And that's our goal. So there was a little bit of a tangent of that, but I think that when students and parents start to look at, and athletes start to look at the system a little differently, I think they change their mindset. Now, I know that's not the case at all junior colleges, at all community colleges. We have a different perspective, and we're looking at it from, the two big things we highlight are value and development. And those go, each one of those has bullet points off it. That's our roadmap right now.
And Dave, with the success that you've had, and the team had a great season this year, placement-wise, how many would you say percentage-wise, if we are going on to play 2 more years at it, regardless 1, 2, or 3 level, how many of your players are moving on? We have
6 sophomores that are, and the good thing is they're all eligible to move on. So academically, they're all eligible to move on. 5 of them will play. One will not play, and that's probably he could have, but it's like you said at the beginning, you're at a junior college for a reason. He probably just didn't take care of some things that he could have taken care of. Although he's eligible academically to move on, there's just it's a personality or situation with him that he's going to struggle in other environments. He even struggled with us, and it's too bad because he was a fantastic player. But all the other players, they're going to move on. So we have almost all of them will be Division II players. Some of them had Division I, the small scholarship offer, but it's not the right situation. But they're going to move on, and it's great, and it's been nice to see that to have all of them eligible to move on. And one kid in particular who isn't, and it's a good story because we've seen this before with our program. We feel like we play at a reasonably high level. And we have kids that move on that don't play a lot for us. And coaches will say, why didn't they play a lot for you? What's the story? I'm like, we have a good program. That's why they didn't play a lot. So he's gonna end up at a good Division III school. Incredible academic situation. You'll understand this from being on the East Coast, but he's in the neighborhood of, and not to say he's going to end up at one of these schools, but these are the type of schools he was looking at and searching through: is the Amherst, the Tufts,
sure,
the Williams,
the NESCAC schools. Yep.
Yeah, NYU. There's a couple of schools like that. He'll probably end up at a West Coast D3 school that's a high academic school. Claremont Scripps might be one of the places he ends up. So awesome. You have a kid who didn't play a lot, but he's going to go to one of these D3 schools and he's going to play a lot of minutes. He's going to, and it's a good situation. And it's hard to get some of the kids to believe that, like, Coach, I'm only playing 10 minutes a game, or I don't play some games. Well, look at the players that are around you. There's a reason why.
Dave, our podcast is geared towards that high school student athlete that's trying to get to the whatever their next level is. And you've worked at some top Division I institutions, Division III, and now obviously at Santa Rosa. And I mean top Division I's like the University of Hartford, of course. But what advice do you have for student athletes about the recruiting process and how to market themselves, let's say?
And I think we talked about that a little bit in like terms of, what we offer and anything. But I think one of the biggest things, and is I think, and you hit is kids, they need to market themselves a little bit. There's a handful of student athletes where coaches are going to see them, and then they're just going to, kids are going to get their letters and their phone calls and their texts and et cetera, et cetera. They're going to get their contact. But there's a large majority of players who, if they feel strongly about themselves and their abilities, they have to sell themselves a little bit. And, one of the biggest things, and I see it all the time, and we get a lot of emails. We get emails from kids regional, some kids nationally, and we get some of the international stuff that comes through, kids that are on part of, I don't know, they find us via history, via Facebook, via, just searching. And the worst thing that we get is the email that says, "Hey coach," and quite frankly, we don't get beyond that. That's just, it's almost immediate delete. It just goes away because if they can't address it with, "Hello, Coach Latourette," or Coach Dave, or Coach Marty, or whatever it is, so we at least know that, okay, they're marketing themselves. Good. B, they know who they're reaching out to, and C, hopefully that they know something about the program and the location. And we'll get kids and we'll get to the coach's name in it and then read about it. And then they ask us for scholarship. Well, delete, because they didn't do enough homework to realize we don't give scholarships. Right. So it's really interesting, that process. So I think the biggest thing is that I could say, like the one bullet point would be, know who you're reaching out to, know the school, know the area, take some time and just do a little research. Man, I tell you, nowadays, internet's is a powerful thing. And we joke with kids once in a while. We're like, "Hey, have you heard of Google?" So use it. They're powerful tools. And I think the kids nowadays have access to that on their fingertips all the time. And if we can teach them to be mindful of doing a little research, about the school, about the coach, and address that a little bit, I think that's huge. And some of the other stuff, and I talked about it, is don't get caught up in the dollar amounts for scholarships. I think we have to look at, okay, I have an offer from this school and it's a couple thousand, maybe it's 8,000, but the school costs 40. So I got to come up with 32. Oh, look, if I go to Santa Rosa Junior College, I can go to school there, even especially if I'm local. I don't have to pay for housing, I can stay at home. Good program, and I talked about it, value, development, everything else. And now all of a sudden, for less than $10,000, holy cow! I only paid $10,000, and I'm getting, so you see for us, and that's just a selling point for us, is we don't want to discourage them from going to another school, but we're asking them, sit down with your parents, go over the financials, really look at it. Is that we all felt good when we were recruited, but at the end of the day, I moved on because I was like, this isn't a good situation financially. So we have to sort of really look at the big picture and look at yourself and your family and what does it mean. And I say big picture, look into the future. Where is that going to place you in 4 years or 5 years, as opposed to where am I going to be next fall? So look down the road and do your research. That's my biggest advice.
That's awesome, Dave. Thanks for that as well. Dave, you own a business that specifies in coaching triathletes. What lessons have you learned from your own athletic background and from coaching soccer that you've been able to apply in your training of endurance athletes now?
It's a good question, because people always ask me, like, yeah, how did you get across from one sport to the other and then back? And at the end of the day, the reality is if you can teach and you can coach, as long as you understand skill sets and tactics and techniques of the other sport, you can teach and coach. So, the big thing that I brought across is my history and my background of teaching and coaching. And it's interesting it's a different world. Like I feel like I function in different worlds sometimes, where I cross over a line, and I'm, from soccer to endurance sports and back and forth. And the good thing is I've married some of the technology that I use with my individual endurance sports athletes into soccer from a performance monitoring type of thing. But the biggest thing is in soccer and in teaching, you're in front of the athlete, you're coaching and you're teaching them. And in a lot of aspects of endurance sports, except for in small situations, for the most part, it's hard to it's more of an industry than it is a craft. And there's people that might say they're coaching endurance athletes, but they're rarely in front of these athletes. So it's more planning than it is coaching. So it's sort of a funky industry, where I think I bring more teaching and more in-face coaching to it than other people bring to it, where they're just writing workouts and planning weeks of training and that type of thing. So, and obviously I have my background, my experience that I brought across from racing on my triathlon while coaching soccer, and sort of married them together. But one of the biggest things I've found with coaches in endurance sports, and it's starting to change a little bit, is when I came across and I had started to inherit and bring across other athletes who had other coaches that they weren't satisfied with, is I'll do detailed race plans. So if an athlete is going to a race, I go in and I start looking at the course they're racing on, and I know all their data and their history. And I create a detailed race plan for them. And some of these people that are racing haven't had that before. And at one point I felt like, where did I get that from? Why do I do that intuitively that other coaches aren't doing that intuitively? I'm like, well, that's what I did before every single match at Eastern, Hartford, Arkansas, Dartmouth, club, whatever it was. But that's what we did. I mean, that was just part of our culture. We gave you guys, Chris, this is when we go up to play BU. This is what they do, and this is what we're going to do. So, and I think I bring that across, in the psychological aspect across to the sport that I don't think a lot of coaches that truly have coaching and teaching history bring to the endurance side.
I can attest to that. That's for sure. Dave, you have run numerous triathlons. You have gone up the hills, and you fought fatigue. But I don't think you're going to do anything like the getting to know you portion of this interview now. I'm going to throw this over to Mark.
The gauntlet.
This is it right here. I don't care. You've done the Ironman. You could have gone to Hawaii, but nothing will be like these next 5 minutes.
Sweating on that is nothing. And to lead us in.
Getting to know you. Getting to know
That's soothing.
all about you.
Okay, Dave. So there's 9 questions, and let's start at the top here. If we were to search your phone, what would be the top 3 played songs or artist?
Holy moly. It's funny.
Is that a song or an artist?
Yes, it is. It's both. It's hard because I would say I'm not a music person, but I'd say I am a music person in that. And I did listen to one of the other podcasts, and I think Sky said something similar. I do listen to a lot of podcasts, where whether I'm working or whether I'm doing something, I'll tend to listen to those. So, but I listen to music sometimes when I work out, if I ride the bike or do something like that. But I don't have any one artist or anything. I probably have the most bizarre playlist. If you look through it, it might be anything. It would go from like Billy Joel to Ariana Grande to Genesis to it would be, you would look at it and like, what is this guy like? And it's more for me with music. It's really more about maybe the tempo to a song, or it catches me regardless of artists. So there's stuff that I listen to be honest with you, I have no idea who the artist is. It's just, I know the song.
Sounds good.
And it's just the way that it is. But I will say there's a local band out here that doesn't, although they probably do some stuff individually now. There was a group called the Box Set. It was just a San Francisco band, and then they had an offshoot of that called the Box Set Duo. People should look it up. They were very, very good, and it's one of those bands where you're thinking, like, why did they not make it?
We'll definitely take a peek at that. Question number 2. Who is the most famous or infamous person you have in your contact list?
Good one. And I probably have, because of my diverse, tracks of soccer and endurance sports, and specifically triathlon, don't know if I could say one person, because if I looked at it, some people wouldn't know who they are. But yeah, I've been fortunate enough on the triathlon side to be able to associate it with some people just like soccer wise. But so on triathlon side, there's a gentleman named Mark Allen who won. Did he win 6? I think he won 6 Ironman Triathlon World Championships. Wow. And he's someone that I could actually send an email to or call, and feel like that's on my triathlon side. That's probably the one guy, and just because he's a bit of a spiritual character, but really solid. He sort of balances out the sport, and I think it's pretty easy on the other side to say Tony DeCicco on the soccer side, and he's been he's a rock, and when you need him, and probably never gave him enough credit in my life, but yeah, he's the guy on the other side that maybe more people on this podcast would know than Mark Allen.
Sure.
You know what? And I think both Allen and DeCicco would fold under the getting to know you line of questioning. That's all.
Absolutely. Mark Allen would struggle.
He'd quit. That's it. I'm not racing anymore. I'm done. I'm going to hiding. Next, do you have any favorite quote or quotes?
Yeah, it would probably be more quotes than anything, just because of different timing or different situations. But there's a couple that always pop up. One of them is I talked about creating that 1-page list of our, what's our culture and what do we value. And soccer is, so one of the things that pops up there is, I always say, is don't trust luck, trust hard work. So it's one thing we use with our guys a lot, and I think that I like. One that's like a quick snapshot that we use a lot, and I think Chris will remember this, is I brought across to Santa Rosa Junior College for the men's program. I was like, do your job, understand your job, do your job, and within that, it's just DYJ, do your job, just to understand that. And the biggest thing, and I think I learned this from Sasho 20 plus years ago, is know your role. If you know your role and take care of your job, then we don't need to talk about wins. If everybody does their job, then we're going to be in the position to take care of results.
Sure.
And my biggest one as a coach, though, and it goes across as coaching soccer, coaching endurance athletes, and it's a little reminder to get some of my athletes back on track. And I just ask them, hey, my job is to ask you to do things you wouldn't do on your own, and so sometimes that sort of snaps them back when they try to figure out, why am I doing this, or why am I here? And then hopefully most of them snap back when I say that, and they realize, most of them gets them back on track to realizing what my job is.
Sure. Next, can you give the listeners a little known fact about yourself?
Oh man, trying to think of something that they couldn't Google me and find out for. And Chris may or may not know this, because this was a camp thing. This goes back to Soccer Plus camps, but okay. I have the self-proclaimed world record in the roll for life.
Yep.
And basically,
I know what that is.
Yeah, basically the roll for life is take a row of soccer balls, and they have to be spaced appropriately. And I'm not going to get into my secrets. And I think, Chris, the number was at 34 when it was all said and done.
I was just going to say it was in the 30s. I knew it was in the 30s. Yeah.
So you line the balls up. You have to take a flying running start, and you basically launch yourself on your chest and have to find a way to roll all the way to the end and off the last ball without falling off to the side. And it's on a video somewhere. I don't know if it exists anymore.
I'm gonna dig up that video somehow.
It's probably in Tony's basement.
I'm sure little Anthony would know where. Well, I'll tell you this though. Kids would look forward to it every week, wherever we were, whether it was in Center College in Kentucky, in Danville, Kentucky, or somewhere in South Carolina. They'd be like, "Are you going to do it? Are you going to do it this week?" And it'd be like, you kind of held it. He would hold it against him and be like, "Yeah, well, if you guys are train hard, I'll do it for you." And then every Friday,
I need to be motivated. I'm not feeling it today, or whatever.
Right frame of mind today. Yeah. Question number 5, Dave. Who has been the biggest influence in your life?
Oh, that's easy. And I think, quietly, my dad. He wasn't someone that asked me to do things, but quietly just respecting the way that he handled his life, how he went about, his job every day, which was do your job. He taught me discipline without telling me about discipline. And it's, it could go in forever, but it was easy to look up to him and say, you know what, and I don't even think about it. I carry a lot of that just with me because of the way that he acted. So in a quiet way, but I have to, really be honest and say beyond that, like professionally, that's more personally and how I carry myself. But I think professionally, Tony DeCicco is the easiest person to say that about. He gave me an opportunity, again, like I said earlier, that I didn't see in myself. He launched me into, I still remember the day when he couldn't go to Chicago to national convention it was the AYSO. It was a national convention in Chicago, and he had to do a session, and I don't remember what the reason why that he couldn't go, whether he was sick or what it was. And 3 days later, I'm on a plane, and he puts me into a national, clinical situation. And trusted me to do that. It wasn't even, this is what you should do. He said, here's this, the session is on this, and off it went. But he opened me up to, when Sasha came to town, Sasha calls Tony, says, Tony, who are the guys? And Tony had a 1-person list, and it was me. And so I can't say enough about how much that influenced the rest of my life, mainly because of his belief in me, introducing me to Sasha, and Sasha had a huge impact on me as well. And then the list just goes down. So it was that those two guys. That's super easy to say that.
Sure, excellent. Next, if you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would you choose?
Oh man, I'm not a big starstruck kind of person, so it would have to be more from an educational standpoint. And there's probably a lot of people, but as I think about it, and I've heard this question before, and I almost could never come up with an answer. But it starts to ring with me. But I think what I would do is probably pull a lot of people back from my past. So I don't think I would do one person. I think I would do a lot of people, and it would include Tony, and it would include Sasha, and it would include Steve Swanson and Janet Rayfield and Beth Reagan at Eastern Connecticut. But it would also pull in guys like Chris, and I'm not trying to butter Chris up, but trying to pull Chris, because they're people that ring true sort of through your life, that you still remember a lot of those things and a lot of those people, and to bring them back and have a big, huge table with a big meal and just run the conversation until it's dry. But that conversation might take a week, but that would probably be, it would be, there's no way that I could do one person. It would have to be, there's been too many people in my life that I would want to just pull back in and just to see where everybody is at and how everybody feels.
If you weren't involved with coaching soccer and triathletes, what do you think you would be doing?
Super easy. I would for sure be doing some sort of, I guess, like color commentary, TV, radio. I mean, 100% for sure. And when I was in college, I did a little bit of that as work study in the sports information department. I did announcing at baseball games and basketball games, and we did a little bit of that. And I've always had a passion for it. And I've actually done a little bit of that. The California community colleges, when they do their Final Four, they broadcast them online, and I've done the color for that for a couple games. And nice. I feel comfortable doing it. And I've done some of that in the triathlon world at some high profile races where I do the race announcing and commentary. But it's not a full-time gig. It's not a thing. But if everything cut everything off for me right now, I mean, that's the direction I would chase. That's
great. Okay, this one always seems to stumble people. What is the one thing you believe that others might think is crazy?
I think it depends on whether they know me or not. If they didn't know me, if people know me, I could say stuff and they're like, yeah, that's not crazy. That's just Dave. But
that's just Lotto. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But, is that, and this came to us, not this past season, but the season before, and I started to think about it. But the one thing that I think is that the value of a goalkeeper, Chris is going to believe me 100% on this, but I think the value of a goalkeeper is underrated. Even when everyone says they want a good goalkeeper, I think the value of a very good goalkeeper who can cover all your bases is underrated. People are like, yeah, goalkeepers are underrated. Oh, they don't have to train hard, or they don't have to do a lot of work. And but as a coach 2 years ago, we saw the value here at San Jose Junior College, where we felt like if we had had a goalkeeper who had been a little more coachable and done some other things for us, would have propelled us much deeper into the postseason. But I don't know if people think that's crazy or not, or people will agree with it, but I think a well-rounded goalkeeper, not spectacular, a well-rounded goalkeeper is underrated.
Yeah, I think if you were asking me to build a team from the beginning, I would 100% say I would start with a great goalkeeper.
And
Absolutely.
And the biggest thing, Chris, is I don't want to worry about my goalkeeper. I want to train him, and I'm fortunate we have another coach who does goalkeeping at Santa Rosa Junior College as well, so we can both do it. So they both get a lot of attention. But I want to insert that goalkeeper into the match, and I don't have to worry about him. I'll worry about the other 10 guys. Like, do your job. Like I said, do your job, and I don't want to worry about you. Use your communication skills and do everything that we know a goalkeeper should do, and then I'd rather worry about the other 10 guys.
Well, congratulations, Dave. You made it through. Oh.
Yeah, I just chugged a 12-ounce Red Bull,
one
too.
second. No, Chris just reminded me.
I got one more we're going to sneak in on you today,
This
too.
is a first. I've never missed the question here. Lastly, do you have any web-based sites or tools that you rely on or enjoy using, whether it be for work or personal use? Thank you, Chris.
always Chris bringing you back on task.
You got to bring me back around.
I think one of the ones I use, and it comes from my endurance sports side. And to be honest, I'm trying to find a way to get it across, and been talking to some coaches about the way that they're using their performance technology, their data stuff that they're getting, like players are wearing polar straps with GPS and heart rate, and some of there's other different systems as well, is a product, it's a web-based thing called Training Peaks. And there's a lot you can do with it, and it's actually almost too complex. But I use some modeling and some things in there with fatigue and fitness and those types of things that is really valuable for me, especially for my high-performing athletes. And I use some of the information from the data that they have that I use individually with athletes, that I'm trying to get some college coaches to use as well, as far as monitoring load, but monitoring the load over not just a week of training or a day of training, and looking at bigger pictures and bigger patterns and things like that. So yeah, that one's pretty good. It's called Training Peaks, and it's been around for a long time, and a lot of athletes use it in a lot of different ways, and coaches use it. So it's pretty diverse, and you can use it as you want to use it. Sure.
Excellent. Now we will throw it back to Chris. Well done.
You know what, Dave? You could wipe your brow, get a towel, take a little swig of something right now, because you handled the getting to know you portion pretty darn well.
That's good. Well, I told you, I chugged a 12-ounce Red Bull about halfway through the interview, so I could.
My final question, David, again, thanks so much for being on with us today.
My pleasure.
It's just, it's been such a pleasure. But if you could give one piece of advice to parents of student athletes about whether it's supporting or the recruiting process, what would that piece of advice be?
And I think I talked about it in the recruiting side. I'd want parents to get involved. Like my parents didn't get involved, but we see parents, and I know you guys see it, parents who get over involved. Be involved. But encourage your son or your daughter to do their own research, decide. And the biggest thing is really deciding where you like to go, not going somewhere because they're offering a little more money, or maybe the soccer's better. I think it has to be a conglomerate, a lump sum, because in the end, we even tell our guys this: make decisions when they're moving on. So there are guys that are moving on to 4-year schools now. Make a decision that's more long-term in focus. And the one thing you hate to bring it up, but we say, listen, if you go to preseason next year, you're in training camp, you start your first match, you go into the first match, and a guy comes in 2-footed and breaks your leg, and you never get to play again. Are you going to be happy where you're at? And I think that's, look big picture and think about where you're at, and would you be at that school, or would you be around that program or environment if you couldn't play soccer?
Yeah, it comes up all the time on the podcast with various guests.
Good, yeah. At least I know I'm not completely off base.
Absolutely not. Dave, before we wrap up here, we're actually coming up on the hour mark. Any final thoughts or parting words for our listeners as to why putting community college on their radar might make sense?
No, I just think put it on your radar, and we talked about it in the podcast. Is that there's reasons, and there's depending on the program, to look at the value side. Is there value for you? is there development? If there's no development in any way, then I don't think that's the right resource. But we feel like we provide that. But I think parents and students should look a little bit more at that and do their research and look at the schools. And I'm going to give us in California a plug. But when the NSCAA rankings came out at the end of the year, and we're thinking, remember, we have California schools in the rest of the country. We had 7 or 8 schools from California in the top 12.
Wow.
Pretty good soccer, pretty good opportunity, pretty good weather. So even if you're a student or parent and you're on another coast or somewhere else, it's a great opportunity. Whether you want your son or daughter to stay local or you want to send them to California, you can do it.
Sure. Sure. Dave, anything that you wish to promote today?
No, I just think if anyone had any questions for me, whether it's about Santa Rosa, whether it's about just community college or junior college in general, they can reach out to me. It's and if you guys do show notes, maybe you can put my email in there, which is just Dave and my website, like my personal website is traintoendure.com, TRAINTOENDURE.com. So Dave at traintoendure.com. And feel free to reach out, and I'd be happy to do that. And the other thing too is if there's coaches out there that are listening, I've started to have some coaches reach out to me that are asking a little bit more about some guidance as far as how to help their team structure their performance, their fitness and their training, and how to balance their matches with recovery and those types of things. So I'm starting to get into that a little bit, and I think it's a huge place. And I actually have had some email discussion back and forth with Tony DeChico that I think that is sort of the next piece for us. I know you guys interviewed John Cohn, and he's in that similar route.
Right.
But I think it's the next big piece even for clubs, for high-level clubs and high-level programs that are maybe, hey, what's the next thing that we can introduce that's going to set us apart? So if anyone has questions in that or interested in that, they can reach out as well.
That's great. It's a good segue. The last question is how listeners can get in touch with you. You gave the email address. Are there any web or social media addresses you'd like to give out as well, Dave?
Yeah, all my social media is DK Latourette, so DK and then the last name Latourette. So that Instagram, Twitter, I'm on Facebook just as me, just as Dave Latourette. So pretty simple to find me if you dig it up.
Okay, excellent. Dave, we appreciate the time. Once again, we've been speaking with Associate Head Coach of Men's Soccer at Santa Rosa Junior College, Dave Latourette. Appreciate the time. Thanks so much, Dave.
Thank you, gentlemen. I enjoyed it.
And don't go anywhere yet. We have our contact information on the web is tacklingcollegesports.com. Make sure you sign up for the F5, first name and email. Get you our weekly email of 5 items we're interested or pondering. It's probably the best read on the interwebs, as far as I'm concerned. And then email is tacklingcollegesports@gmail.com, facebook.com/tacklingcollegesports. Twitter is @tacklingcollege and Instagram tacklingcollege. And until next time, be your best.
Be your best.
Your college sports future awaits. So join the TCS Nation and be your best.